This is the third in the video series about spiritual integrations that I experienced between 2010 and 2015. This one's focus, or the primary focus, is on becoming the memory keeper. In October of 2014, I experienced the largest integration with a former client who had become a friend while I was in Santa Rosa, California. In this one, Paramahamsa Yogananda was present again and again. This time he was also the catalyst, however, without Sri Yuktesar and Sai Baba. I had gone with Robert to see a biopic about Yogananda's life, and while we were watching it, I was repeatedly brought to tears as I heard my own words, things that I had said come out of the voice, or from the voice of a brown-skinned man who I had no relationship with. There was word after word, and again and again, and I was just kind of quietly stunned. And while I'm watching this movie, I thought had been brought to Sonoma for a new place to live, for a new home. And I realized while watching the movie that in these like parallel universes that this was not home for me. Yogananda sent Babaji letters expressing his desire to go home to India. And each time he was told, nope. And I knew that I was hearing my own no. However, that presence that I was with was not to be contained merely on a screen. However, blessedly, this time also I was not alone. Someone else had the courage to bear witness. So Robert, the person who had invited me to go see the movie, was a former client who had become something of a friend during the journey of taking Glenn back to his birth mother in Navajo country. And Robert had the sense, bless him, to not stop the car in the middle of the suburbs when I asked him to, because when we left the movie theater, I put that seatbelt on, as one does, and the moment the seatbelt hit my heart, the energies within and around me got so intense that I knew something similar to what had happened in the past was going to reoccur. I had just enough time to fire off a text to two friends that simply said "now!" ! And bless them, I don't even know what they did, but they knew what to do from a couple of thousand miles away. And Robert apparently also knew what to do in the moment, and found a place not on a sidewalk, but in a nearby national forest, and pulled onto the side of the road with just enough time for me to spill out of the car door onto the ground like a puddle of goo into what an outside observer would call an hours-long epileptic fit. I mean, my body convulsed in waves from head to toe. My torso would lift from the ground while the rest of the body was either anchored to something into it, or the ground became the anchor. I was entirely outside of control of my body and mind. I felt like my joints would pull apart like on some medieval rack, that my ribs would shatter, that I would vomit out the nothing that was in my belly. I wasn't just blown apart like in 2010. This time I was pulled apart, pulled out of myself, and then was blown into. And I described it as the first part, because it was a two-parter, The first part being surrounded by a universal-sized didgeridoo, and that anything that was of me, or wasn't of me rather, was actually pulled out of me while my body flayed around and flopped on the ground like a fish out of water. My chest kept heaving like in these great spasms. Oh my God, it hurt so bad. It hurt so bad, and I cursed out loud, and I tried to manage just the dry heaves of just vomitless air wanting to come up, and I screamed probably more than once. If you are not going to use me now, you better fucking take me, because this is too much for one being. Oh, I was pissed. I hurt so bad. And if I thought that that was too much, the next wave of energy proved me oh so wrong, and it wouldn't stop. And in it, the things around me changed. And during the part 2 thing of it, and then the didgeridoo became like this Ingrid-sized cocooning thing. And instead of stuff being pulled out of me, I was blown into. This was not a gentle Jesus bringing folks in. This was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of energies poured into me. 100 times more than those experienced on that darn massage table back in 2011. This time they were unidentifiable by face or name. However, I could feel where they were from on the planet. And they came from everywhere. So many blown into this little body is 165 pounds, but compared to universality, it's tiny, and they wouldn't stop. And when all was said and done, nearly 2 hours had passed with me cussing and crying and flailing and flopping on the side of the road. And Robert, bless him, sitting right by me. And I slowly came back into this practical reality of things. And Robert's just looking at me. He handed me some water and he said, "So what did you become this time?" And I was like, I don't recall exactly what I said to him in that moment, because it was 11-ish years ago. I don't know if I said it out loud, but I sure as shit thought, what the fuck do I know? Like, how could I possibly even know what that is if I don't even know myself? If I don't know what just happened? And I came to call it a song because, I mean, what else would a didgeridoo do but sing? Call it another song of reunion from those places that I've touched or given birth in previous lifetimes that others have. Like, it was like each note I've ever been, each of the Christed ones where they had been and their time and place on the planet. God, I tried to wrap myself around it. And 2 days later, to help my body create space for everyone that I was now responsible for, I went to an acupuncturist. He dropped in 4 needles, only 4, which I was annoyed about because I had paid $150 for 4 needles. And as I was getting ready to get off the table, he said, "Make sure you reveal yourself slowly." And I was like, what are you talking about? Except, I mean, I didn't have the courage to ask him what he saw, but I knew what he saw. I mean, come on. In January 2015, a sweat lodge outside of Cleveland, Ohio, I became aspen in water. In less dramatic fashion, I was pulled into the ground as the mother root and spread under the Great Lakes to reach my people, the people and the places they now live, to reach them through the water. And then when I was done being pulled into the ground, I was yanked up into the sky and turned into star and fire. And then 7 months later, there was the reunion or reintegration with the winged ones in the presence of another acupuncturist. She dropped a needle in my heart, and in that moment, Not only was I covered in feathers, I became the colored angel that I saw when I was 12. Feathers sprouted from my arms. Those arms became wings. And when I became owl, raven, crow, chickadee, magpie, eagle, hawk, condor, dodo, and more. We became together winged in the same way I became horse. And in December 2015, I became wolf when a pack showed up outside of Helena, Montana, where they'd not been seen in ages. They came howling in the middle of the night, calling to me, calling me home, calling me back to the pack. And I grew fur, and my socked feet became padded paws. On the way to the bathroom, we became one. And within each iteration of these integrations was the understanding that I was no longer just Ingrid, the thing that God tried to argue with me about back in 2008. I wasn't just Ingrid. My body is not mine. Although I carry the responsibility for it, the knowledge is not mine, though I carry the responsibility for it. Though the voice and tongue are not mine, though I carry the responsibility for it. Though the heart and the hearts of the beings who have chosen me or have chosen to move through me, to walk with me or within me, are not me. This is why I say I've been prayed into existence and poured into being, poured into one, from the one into another. And for many years, I did not understand why these things had happened. I honestly didn't spend too much time trying to figure it out. I mean, I didn't even have the language to articulate questions, had absolutely no framework and no other human being with whom to talk about these things. Like, I could look around and feel through the why of it all in the grand scheme of things, kind of, sort of, but any solid comprehension of me being this thing, whatever it is, I'm this thing, but I'm not this thing. Like, they're so far beyond me. And it also was clear that whether I understand it or not, something else does. These others do. And there's a Lama Govinda who said in his book called The Way of the White Clouds that consciousness is based on two functions: awareness and the storing up or preservation of the fruits of experience, which we call memory. Consciousness as a storehouse of experience by far outweighs consciousness as awareness. While the latter is momentary and more or less limited to one object, the former is universal and not affected by time, persisting even when we are not aware of it. It is for this reason that the concept I can't pronounce here, one of the two major schools of sects of Mahayana Buddhism, it's one of the reasons why they defined the deepest consciousness as the stored consciousness, in which not only the experiences of our present life, but those of all of our ancestors, reaching back into the infinity of time and space, are preserved, and which therefore is ultimately a consciousness of universal character, connecting the individual with all of that exists or ever has been in existence or may come into existence again. The higher consciousness is the product of the widest range of experience. The amplitude between the poles of universality and individuality. Taking that and the experiences after it, when I began living on the road, and just crossing paths and places and peoples that I had no conscious connection to as Ingrid, where I could recognize where I was, knew that I was home, where I could see how the memories of those that had been poured into me affected my way of being and those with whom I had contact. The memories are what allow me to sing in languages I have never heard and allow me to move instinctively through circumstances for which I have no spiritual or intellectual training. It's why I'm called to places around the globe. It's why or how and why I know a rock needs her name back south of Aho, and I know which mountains or tribe is crying, "Where have you been? Where the fuck have you been? Oh, and you're home." None of these memories that I carry that are restored through me are mine. They are not available and retrievable upon command like those, like at trivia night. These memories are specific to peoples, to physical spaces, to communities beyond physical spaces. They live not up here, but they are in my marrow. And when circumstances call for it, they act as muscle memory. They allow me to see lostness through the consciousness of others long, long gone from the planet. And they are a reminder of I am not me and I am not alone. I am many. And I have the capacity to experience their world. And it is in part through these memories that I have developed relationships with what others identify as inanimate objects, both the visible natural world and those beings that are not visible. These relationships are my guide. They're how I teach others. And they're also not meant for me to hold on to. They are meant to be returned home. They are meant to be passed on back into the eyes and the hearts and the ears of those who have been calling for them. And sometimes they are meant to go back to the ground from which they came, from where they called home. This is how I already know where I will be traveling through Southwest Asia, across the central belt of Africa. How I know when I meet particular people who are connected to specific diasporas that I have this within me that must be passed on to them. And if it doesn't get passed on, it's lost forever. I have said before, I didn't ask for this. I've said before, I don't want this. I certainly did not ask for it. I'm not so sure if I still don't want it. I don't know what comes of this. I don't know how to put all of these things into motion for a larger world that, at least so far, doesn't want this answer to their prayer. I do know it's not for nothing. I just don't know what that something is in the practical world, in the way that supports me and those for whom I was made. I guess there's only one way to find out.